Tutankhamun Hitherto undiscovered chambers in tomb KV62. Part 2. A misinterpretation of the lines. It is possible but quite unlikely that Reeves completely misinterpreted the lines in the walls, and there is nothing behind the walls other than solid rock. Unfinished corridors. More likely is the possibility of existing chambers, but they may have remained unfinished and were closed in antiquity to create a nice-looking burial chamber. In such a case, science would be able to study ancient air, perhaps of great interest for climate and environment research. A controlled and uncontaminated testing would be the primary target. This possible explanation, on the other hand, does not answer the fact of the two-stage decoration of the northern wall in a satisfactory way. The wall would have to be painted in one stage and would rather be in the 18 grid and not in the 20 grid. In fact, some researchers uttered some doubt on the alterations of the northern wall. The Institute of Evolutionary Medicine also analyzed possible burials behind the northern wall of KV62. Some individuals from the Amarna age probably can be excluded in advance. They died decades before Tutankhamun and were buried elsewhere, for example Akhenaten, Maketeten and the other daughters. Ankhesenamun survived Tutankhamun and is also excluded. Only 4 candidates are realistic. 1. The burial of Queen Nefertiti as Smenkhare. It is possible that indeed Nefertiti will be found in KV62. In such a case, the mummy must be female, c. 30 to 40 years of age, and the inscription on funerary objects should carry her name and titles or those of Smenkhare respectively. Such a result would raise many questions on the published genetics of Tutankhamun's ancestry. Historic inscriptions naming Nefertiti to be the mother of Tutankhamun, identifying the younger lady KV35 to be the genetic mother of Tutankhamun and, therefore, possibly Nefertiti. A complete reassessment of previous scientific results would be necessary. The historic inscription would require an alternative reading and another person have to be suggested to be the mother. 2. The burial of Kia. Mamda el-Damati, Minister of Antiquities, suggested in an interview another possible candidate, Kia, second wife of Akhenaten and possible mother of Tutankhamun. In such a case, it would be problematic to explain the genetic mother, the younger lady, and the fact that the canopic jars of Kia were found outside the allegedly intact burial. The jars from KV55 would have to be explained as unused doublets, not used for Kia's burial, but later for the secondary burial of Akhenaten. In this case, the filling would contain the viscera of a man. A genetic test of the content of the jar would be of great importance. 3. The burial of male, Smenkhare. If the tomb of Tutankhamun yields the burial of a young man, c. 20 to 30 years of age and labeled as Smenkhare, the theory of a male Korula must be reassessed. So far, nothing points to such a solution. 4. The burial of Queen Meriteten. A possible burial of Queen Meriteten was also suggested. She also might have ruled briefly after Nefertiti, alias Menkhere's sole ruler, and she might be the third Akhenkheres mentioned by Manetho. She was depicted as similar to Nefertiti, so the wall paintings in Tutankhamun's tomb may be read as King Tutankhamun performing the opening of the mouth ritual on the mummy of his elder sister, Queen Meriteten. An intact burial perhaps would prove her identification with inscriptions and genetics. Furthermore, there are good arguments for Meriteten. Her burial is unknown, nor has ever been a mummy identified as hers. Thus, she could be buried in KV62. Few objects of Meriteten are known, from the treasure of Tutankhamun, like the ivory plate of Meriteten or the ivory castagnets of Meriteten were found. Among the burial items of Tutankhamun, these objects are personal items, kept for nostalgic reasons, but not a vital part of her funerary objects. On SETI. Nicholas Reeves quoted in the introduction of his sensational paper, the episode of On SETI and her remarks on the tomb of Nefertiti. On SETI, also known as Dorothy Louise Eady, was a British eccentric and claimed to be reincarnated from ancient Egypt. However, she was not the usual crackpot, esoteric, and many of her predictions turned out to be true. Furthermore, she was a true scientific researcher with excellent scientific publications. Reeves quotes the remarks Seti made to Hani el-Sinai, mentioning that she knows where the tomb of Nefertiti exists. According to Seti, Nefertiti was not buried in Ekitaton, but in Thebes, quote, "And I can tell you this much, it's in the Valley of the Kings, and it's quite near to the Tutankhamun tomb. But it's in a place where nobody would ever think of looking for it," she laughed. And apparently it is still intact. Reeves, looking for the tomb for quite a time, first suspected KV-63, later KV-64, to be the tomb of Nefertiti. Both claims were in vain. KV-63 turned out to be a depot containing mummification material, coffin and an impressive collection of ancient pillows. KV-64, recently investigated by Suzanne Bickel, had a burial of an elderly woman from the later 18th dynasty and a secondary use of a chantress of Amun called Nemespast. But no Nefertiti at all. The claim that Nefertiti must be buried behind the northern wall of KV-62, where no one would expect it, might be the final attempt by Reeves. Finding the undisturbed burial of Nefertiti would indeed be the holy grail of Egyptology. To quote John Harris, Seti made this prophecy shortly after the death of President Gamal Abdel Nasser in the early 1970s, 45 years in advance. Most psychics made their knowledge known to the public after the discovery was made, but not in this case. If Reeves really possible genealogy of the kings from Tutmosis IV. The relation of Amenhotep III mummy CG 61074 and his father Thutmose IV CG 61073 is not confirmed by genetics. The mummy of Queen Mutamuya is not identified. Only the most important children of Amenhotep III are given in the graphic: Crown Prince Thutmose, his younger brother Amenhotep, later Akhenaten, his sister wife Bianga, lady probably Nefertiti. The position of Aja is uncertain. Perhaps he was a brother of Queen Tchai from the Akhmim clan. General Horn was first married to Amenia, later with Mutanjmit, the son of Nefertiti.